That's incredible. Yeah, it's sometimes those what feels like such a small event in your life that just turns it in a different direction. And when you look back, you realize it was monumental. But in the moment, it doesn't feel like that. It just feels like another day in another situation, but it sets a different tone for what your next stage of life is going to be.
Welcome to the Break Free podcast with your host, David Mancilla. Today, we have with us Marissa Reckmann. I met Marissa a few months ago, and I was immediately impressed with her achievements in life, the world where she is right now, especially in a society that doesn't favor ladies for the most part. And you have been able to achieve maximum results way above anybody else that I know in the corporate world. So welcome.
Well, thank you so much, David. Yeah, it's a pleasure being here with you today and having met you over the last few months and a few of our conversations today. So I'm very thankful to be here and to be the guest today. And I'm looking forward to our discussion.
Wonderful. Marissa, where do you live and what do you do for a living?
Yeah, so I live in Calgary, Alberta, here in Canada now. I originally came from Ontario, but I've been out here for quite some time. And I'm the CEO of a company called Agate Laboratory. So we are a laboratory company. We focus in a number of different industries and divisions across Canada: environmental, mining, energy, oil and gas, air monitoring. Everything that we do is tied to laboratory analysis and work of that nature. And I've been in this role for just over 2 years, but I've been at the company for over 10, and the industry as a whole for just over 15.
Fantastic, which is quite a fast pace to reach the top, right?
Yeah.
And for the audience, we at ISU, we write laboratory management systems. So I know how hard it is to run a lab. I mean, I just know from the science perspective. I cannot even imagine the business, the keeping customers happy, delivering results on time, the risks that if the results are not accurate, the liability that you guys have is tremendous, right?
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. I think that's one of the things that sometimes even individuals in our company forget, that the data that we are delivering is being used for these life-altering decisions that we see across Canada, right? It's being used to protect human health. It's being used to evaluate environmental contaminants of concern. It's being used for food safety to make sure that what goes on the shelves is going to be protective of all Canadians. So the liability and the risk is immense, which means that's why there's got to be such a big focus on the quality and the service piece and making sure that we're executing accordingly and we can be trusted in what we do.
Beautiful. And your operations are coast to coast, right?
They are, yeah. So we grew out of Calgary. This was really our home. We were one location here in Calgary 42 years ago, and we were really focused in the oil and gas industry and geology in particular. And the owner of the company, he had this incredible diversification and growth plan that he really focused on, along with all of the leaders of the company through the years. And we were able to build it organically across Canada, which was a tremendous feat. Not a lot of acquisitions in there. So we really built from the ground up, which can be a very long process and certainly comes with its challenges, but it meant that we got so much control in what the company would be shaped to look like in the future, and that we could really instill the culture that we wanted across the company as well too. So now we operate fully across Canada.
So it's funny because we just say coast to coast and across Canada, and just for clarity, Canada has more landmass from its coastal borders than going from Ontario to Central America. So, like, it's half a continent, really. So
Yes.
it's not simple.
It isn't simple. No, it's so true. I mean, sometimes I say instead of a lab company, we really are a logistics company, because that's most of what we do on a day-to-day basis is just figuring out, from client sites to the lab, how are we maneuvering samples across this entirely massive country that we all live in. And so you're right, it is not simple. It's quite a feat. And then outside of Canada, we do a lot of international work as well too, that we kind of bring home to the Canadian borders also. So that in itself just adds another layer of complexity.
Incredible. It's fascinating. So let's look back and see how you were able to get where you are.
Yeah.
Did you go to university? What did you take? What did you take in? What was your career in college? What did you do?
Yes. Yeah, I did go to university. So I grew up in Thunder Bay, Ontario, in Northern Ontario. And I stayed at university there, Lakehead University, and I went into chemistry. I loved the sciences. So that really aligns with a lot of the work that we do here in the world of analytical laboratory services. So that was my background. And when I went into university, I thought that I wanted to really work in a lab. I didn't know what kind for sure, but that was really what I had expected. I grew up in a family that was all entrepreneurs. So my parents built and ran their own business with partners. My grandparents were entrepreneurs. They built their own businesses from the ground up. And when you see that as a child, you really get a deep sense and appreciation of how hard that is and the struggles. And I know you know that from all of your experience and everything that you've achieved. And, you know, as a child growing up, I looked at it and I thought, wow, I mean, there's just not a stop button to their business. It's not a situation where you go to work and then you come home and you can focus 100% on your family or your friends, or it's 24/7 and you take home all of these other pressures on you, right? Like you have to go home and you have to worry about every employee that is in that company and what happens, you know, the decisions that you make and how it affects their families. And so when I was growing up and I saw that with my parents, I mean, they certainly were able to be successful, but it just came with so many other facets that I thought, you know what, when I'm older, I just want to go somewhere. I want to go to work. I want to get a paycheck and I want to go home and not worry about it. And because I love the sciences, that's what drew me to the sciences for university. But then going through everything, and as you grow older and as you mature and as you start kind of really assessing what you want, I think you learn more about yourself, you know, and I really recognize that everything that I tried to push away in the world of business and entrepreneurship, and that's really what I love the most. So while I didn't go to university for that and I focus on the sciences, I recognize that there was just this deep innate drive in me to be part of something that I could help to shape and create. And I really wanted to be part of the business side. So when I came out of university, one of the first areas I looked at was how can I blend my background, the sciences, with getting experience in the world of business and start to grow my career.
That is beautiful. So do you remember when was it that you actually fell in love with chemistry?
It was definitely in high school. I had a pretty eccentric chemistry teacher, I think in grade 10 or 11. And he actually, I mean, it's not, you know, Thunder Bay is, you end up knowing a lot of individuals in the city, right? And so the chemistry teacher at that time was actually a parent of one of my friends at the time. But he was really eccentric and lively. And I just fell in love with it. I enjoyed it, but I really loved the hands-on ability to actually work through a process and work through a procedure and kind of see myself creating something and learning about how that all came together. So I would say, yeah, maybe about grade 10 or 11, I really felt a deep love for it.
Do you know how blessed you are? Most people go to college and 3 years in, they still don't know what they want to do for their life.
Yes.
And sometimes they finish and they still don't know whether that's what they want or not.
Absolutely. You know, and I think it's really hard, I think, because you're still so young going through those, and you're supposed to be making these life-altering decisions, and you're supposed to be figuring out, you know, what path you're on. And there's a lot of stress for students at that level, you know, trying to have it all right. And I think in large part, people really need to understand that life is such an evolution, and there's going to be different paths that you end up taking that you think that maybe you never were going to take. But you'll get to that in time, right? The stress of trying to have it perfect and trying to write your story when you're only a quarter of the way through, I think is too much. So people need to give themselves a break and really just start to feel out what they love and start to lean into things that really interest them.
For sure. And, you know, I think teachers have a huge impact in our lives. And we didn't ask for a teacher, right? The teacher just showed up. For me, it was very similar. When I actually started computer science because I was lazy. Back in the 80s, before you could graduate, you had to pass this typewriting exam. You have to be a certified typewriter. Like, remember
Oh,
typewriters? Like those
yes.
things with buttons that will actually print something on a paper?
Yes.
And I hated it because if you go in the middle of the page or you made a mistake,
Yep.
you have to start all over again, right? And I'm like, and on top of that, they made you do it fast. The certification, you had to make so many words a minute. And I was like, I was so frustrated with it. And back then, my two uncles, they were senior managers in the computer departments, one for a bank, the other one for a chemical company, for
Oh,
Henkel.
wow. Yeah.
And one of them saw my frustration when I was just talking in a family reunion, and he said, "Come to my office next week." And he came. I came, and he showed me this computer terminal. I remember it was amber, black and amber. And he showed me, "Look, I'm gonna make this letter, and I'm gonna make a mistake. I'm just gonna push this button, erase the letter or the word, and type it in again. And then I push this button, and up it comes." And I was just like, my mouth was just open with awe, right?
Yeah.
And then I completely changed careers. I was destined to become an airplane pilot, a professional airplane pilot. And when I saw that, I'm like, no way, I'm going to just study this computer thing. And that changed my
Wow.
life. But then in computer science school, I had specifically one teacher. He was incredible, and exactly like your
Yeah.
chemistry teacher, right? Eccentric, in love with his craft, and because I was so attracted to it, he allowed me to help him to manage the computer lab. Back
Yeah.
then, we didn't have personal computers; we just like big mainframes in the school, right? So I became his right hand, and I was doing pretty much all his job.
That's incredible. Yeah. It's sometimes what feels like such a small event in your life that just turns it in a different direction. And when you look back, you realize it was monumental. But in the moment, it doesn't feel like that. It just feels like another day in another situation, but it sets a different tone for what your next stage of life is going to be.
Yes, for sure. And and now that I get older, science is science. I think there is a basic background with all scientists that all scientists have. And now I'm so fascinated about the microscopic world. I'm
Mm,
reading so much about quantum theory, quantum mechanics, quantum physics, and I just realized that actually those are the building blocks of the periodic table, for example.
yeah.
And so what you do for me is fascinating. Like just being able to analyze in a molecular level what's going on and
Yes.
how changing that affects our health or our progress, right?
Yes, absolutely.
It's
Yeah, and I
fascinating.
think, in university, I saw a lot of that. I had some incredible professors, and when I was doing my thesis work in university in my last year, my professor, Dr. Craig MacKinnon, who's still at Lakehead University, um, the whole department was phenomenal. And I think being at a smaller university also gave me the opportunity to have so much more hands-on attention with so many of them as well too. But what was I think most fascinating is just watching the way that their minds work, right? There's so much that goes over your head. There's so much that you just think like, I have no idea what you're talking about right now. And this is there's so many complexities to it, but watching just how much they loved it and how they felt like they could solve world's problems and issues with getting down to that level through science. I think that was really inspiring. And what I took away from that more than anything is that they just taught you how to think. I remember being in, I think it was my first or second year, one of my physics exams. And if it was set for 3 hours, our professor would not let you out of that room for the full 3 hours, even if you felt like there was nothing else you could put on the page. He just said, no, you're going to sit here, and if there's even one more inch that you can add into one of the answers, I'll give you partial marks if I can see that you're thinking things through, right? And that was such a good life lesson because it taught you, don't ever give up. Like, you can always push a little farther, but the biggest importance is that you might not have the right answer, but as long as you're trying to find the solution and you're working through the process, he really taught us how to think, and I think you can apply that to anything in life. It doesn't matter where you're sitting. If you can just coach your brain on how to break down problems into smaller pieces and try and build them back together to find a solution. It helps you in all areas and aspects of your life.
And exactly. And is that perseverance, right? Like instill it, like, again, another blessing, right? I had similar situations with our computer lab exams were like 4 or 5 hours. And even
Yes.
if the thing didn't compile at the end, we will actually take credits for the effort. And 2 hours in, your brain is fried, but you still be encouraged to experiment and to try to produce. And that gives you perseverance.
Yeah.
I wasn't the best in my class. In computer science, I had 5 friends that were like twice as smart as me, and they did so much better. But at the end of the day, I'm the only one that runs a computer software business. Everybody else took different paths, and they were much better than me, but I had more persistence.
Yeah.
Right?
It's interesting as well too. I always found high school to be very easy. Things came naturally. It never felt stressful. I did and performed really well. And university was just an eye opener because it was a challenge. And, when you're learning to try and do so many things at the same time. It's, part of the first part of your life where you're taking on more of that independence and, you're not handheld by your parents potentially. And you're learning like, how do I balance my social life and how do I balance school? And I was playing basketball at the time and our travel schedules were very intense. So you're traveling all the time. And so it was a real eye opener for me to get through university when I had always found things to be relatively easy. And I'd always been top in class in university. Like there were so many individuals where I felt like it's so easy for them and I've got to actually work at this, right? But again, like you said, it really teaches you that perseverance. It teaches you, sometimes the best thing you can do is fail and get knocked down, because then you learn how to get back up and how to push harder. And it's in those moments, I think, that you do the most self-development. You really grow in those moments when you can learn to say, okay, this didn't go as I planned, but here's what I learned from it, and I'm gonna do better next time. And I think it was really helpful actually to feel those struggles through that time of my life.
It's fantastic. What a beautiful foundation. Now I see why you became the person that you are, right? Because that creates a foundation, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of people in their life, they eventually get there, but much later in life, right?
Yeah.
I truly agree with that. Problems is what makes you grow.
Mm-hmm.
I was analyzing myself about 3 weeks ago, and I realized the biggest problem that I always had was the illusion that I wasn't supposed to have problems.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
That's actually very fascinating, and it's so true, right? You get taught or coached that things are supposed to be perfect, and then that causes so much anxiety trying to find that when that's never going to happen in any part of your life. It's never going to be perfect.
Exactly, but it's for a reason, because I think we came to this world to learn and to overcome.
Yes.
And the only way to do that is by going through problems. And what happens is that your problems getting bigger, but you get better at solving them. And then you keep going and growing and growing. I had a point in my life where I had like a crazy life crisis, and I'm like, I don't want any more problems. I downsized. It was beautiful because I started applying the 80-20 law, and I was just doing 20% to get 80% when I wanted.
Yeah.
And my problems didn't disappear, but they got reduced. Like I was living an amazing time. And then a few years later, I got bored.
Not enough problems on your plate.
I got bored. I'm like, because I'm not solving enough. Like
Yeah.
And it was horrible because Paulo Coelho, the famous writer, he says that we are not depressed. He says that we are bored.
Oh,
Right?
What? I would agree a lot with that. I think that it really says something when you challenge your mind, and you really tap into all of your potential, and I think, and you see a lot of people when they go through retirement like that, right? They try and transition into retirement, and if they don't fill their time with enough things to focus on, it might be really enjoyable for a few months, maybe a year, but at some point in time, they become bored and they're searching for something else. Whereas when you see individuals who transition to retirement and they fill their schedules more than they ever accomplished before, and they seem to just be having the best time in life because they're still challenging themselves, they're still keeping themselves active, and they're still really, really focused on things, right? But it's also different for everybody. I think that's what I've learned as well too, is that, to me, as an individual, if I want to feel busy, this is what it looks like, right? It might be packed with work and my family and friends, but to other individuals, their busyness or their challenge or their stimulation for their mind might actually look much different. It might look like you're at the top of a mountain and you're meditating for 8 hours a day, and but that's very fulfilling in their own way, right? And so I think that's the other thing that people forget, is that the pace at which you live life or what you're doing, and it's different for everybody, and what everybody needs is unique.
Yes.
And it's not a one fit answer for all. So you really just need to learn about, what stimulates you to keep you going so that you don't get bored in any way.
You are completely right. And it actually comes from the perception of life. I was reading a scientific article a couple of weeks ago, and they say that we still don't know whether humans, listen to this, whether humans see colors the same way.
Wow.
They have figured out that some people, when they see purple, it's actually gray for them, but they call it purple. And they still don't know. So like, our brain interprets our reality in a different way. Every single brain is different, which is
Yes.
fascinating, right?
Isn't that amazing? And then you think of how far that would then apply to things in life, where we're trying, again, we keep trying, and we fight with one another in so many ways as well too, whether it's politics or religion, all these things in the world, right? It feels like we're constantly fighting to prove our point to somebody else, to say, this is the right answer, this is what you should believe. And meanwhile, like, to that point, you have somebody that doesn't even see the world the same way as you, so the answer can't be the same. It just theoretically cannot be the same. So I think that there's so much still to learn about each other and in this world, and hopefully with that comes more understanding of one another and different viewpoints and different ideas and philosophies, and someday, maybe more respect for one another through that journey.
For sure, definitely. But going back to purpose and solving problems.
Yeah.
There is another statistic. I don't know if you know about this, but especially males that retire and don't stop adding value to their life or somebody else's life, they die within 5 years. Did you know that?
No.
Statistically proven.
Wow. I knew that there was definitely a differential between, the genders in terms of kind of their livelihood after that in those stages. But I didn't realize that's a very short window.
5 years.
Wow.
So let's say you retire and you just want to go play golf.
Yeah.
But you don't do it in a meditative step, like you don't think you're adding value, you're just passing time, and you stop adding value to others. That's it. 5 years, you get cancer or something, or heart attack, and you die.
Wow.
Isn't it crazy?
It is.
Now, like, to your point, if they are playing golf and they are adding value to somebody else, they are teaching somebody else how to play golf, or they find it like a way to meditate,
yeah,
that's fine. But it's people that stop adding value to themselves and others, that those are the ones that actually, because
That's
they
amazing.
lose the purpose of being here.
Yeah.
Isn't that
Yeah.
crazy?
And I think that's, in and of itself, that's a really beautiful thought in life, is that we all have a purpose, and you're striving to find it. And again, it's different for everybody, but knowing your purpose somehow makes a big difference to being able to actually achieving it, or being on a path to achieve it.
Definitely. So you graduated university. What happened after that?
Yeah. So my mom kicked me out.
That's awesome.
She loves that. She loves that part of the story as well too, because she probably hoped that I would come back at some point. But so there wasn't a lot of job opportunities in the city at that point in time, and I'm starting to look for my next step in a career, and she's a strong Italian woman, and she said, you have to leave. You've got to go find yourself somewhere else. The safe choice is staying here and staying with us, and just settling for whatever you might be able to find, because there wasn't a lot in the sciences at that time. There was other options in the employment market, but not a lot in the sciences. And that's like very luckily changed a lot for Northern Ontario since I've left, which is wonderful to see. And I had a friend that was coming out to Calgary. She was going into the graduated nursing program. And I was born in Calgary. I was only here till I was 2, but I do have ties. I have roots here in Calgary and very strong, lifelong family friends of my parents here. And so I felt like, okay, well, if I'm going to go anywhere, it's Calgary or Southern Ontario. And I had a lot of, friends in Southern Ontario as well too, but this felt like a natural progression. And I came west and I instantaneously found a few jobs. It was also in a boom time in the market. So it was very helpful to come in when there was a plentitude of options on the table. And I started working at a few jobs, but they weren't what I wanted long-term. So I was still searching for what that career role would be. And I actually started working, this is so many years ago now, but I started working at Agate at that time. I very luckily found the opportunity. They were hiring in the environmental division and had some significant growth plans there. So I came into the company. I worked in the business development groups at the onset and the beginning. And it was a very lucky path for me because, I was able to get exposure to all different divisions of the company because of all of the opportunities that were there with any company growing that quickly and seeing the diversity of the company itself. All of these job opportunities start to open up, right? And so like you said, it was a faster path, but I got exposed to management so quickly, and I got exposed to different divisions and different regions, and then started working across Canada. And so all that really helped to set an incredible foundation for my lifelong career as well.
That is fascinating. So your real formal job, your first formal job was at Agate.
It was, yeah. Imagine that. And so I like I said, I've spent over approaching about 11 years with the company. But I also spent a 5-year duration in the environmental consulting world. So at a certain point in my career, I've always really enjoyed learning about the environmental world. And when I was a young kid, I started a Kids for Saving Earth Club back in Thunder Bay. So me and all my friends would get together, and we raised money to adopt a few whales. We raised money to save a few acres of rainforest. Wow. We would put on an Earth Day at the school every single year. We worked on some recycling programs. And so early on in my life, I really was tied to, what can I do better for the environment? And so I went into the environmental consulting side. I worked for a firm here in Calgary that works in Western Canada as well as Australia. And it was an incredible experience with a really incredible group. They taught me so much. I got to see firsthand, what the life and the work of an environmental consulting company looks like. And it also really helped me grow as a person and as a leader and just challenge myself in a new way as well. And then I returned to Agate just about 3 years ago for the next stage.
That's incredible. So you actually left and came back. Okay, so I have so many questions. Number one, so you started in business development in Agate.
Yeah.
What was your progression to the point that you actually left for this environmental consulting firm?
Yeah, so I started business development in the environmental side. And for me, I was really seeking, like I mentioned, something that could blend the sciences because I didn't want to lose that. And I love that, but I really wanted to learn the business end. And I love being with people. I love meeting new clients and understanding their problems and trying to partner to find solutions. And so I really knew that going into my career, I was looking for something that could kind of give me that, which is why I chose the business development pathway. And I worked in the environmental group for I want to say a year and a half, 2 years perhaps. And then I actually moved into the energy group. There was an opportunity to manage the business development group for the oil and gas division at that point in time, the petroleum division. So I went into that side, which again was great because it showed me a different side of the company, different division, different service line, different networking connections. And from there was a few different steps. At one point in time, I managed the operations in our air group, and that was a very different challenge going into the operational side after having been in the business development side. Just before I left the company, I was leading the groups across Canada on the environmental side as well too. So there was a few different steps within the company. And again, just based off of the fact that we grew so quickly and there was so many different either locations or services coming to the table, that it fostered this amazing ability for a lot of individuals to step up to the challenge where needed. So before I left for the environmental consulting side, I was managing the teams across Canada focused in the environmental division and then the business development lines.
Okay, so let me get this straight. It took you a long time to actually get your dream job. You started growing into your dream job to the point that you were managing people across the country. What was in your mind to make the decision to go to another place? We're like, what was going on back there?
I know. Yeah, this I get this question a lot because it is, and it's not natural, right? To leave and return or come back. And I think because I had been at the company and just this company, you get to a point where you start to lose trust in yourself a little bit. You start to think, okay, well, am I doing it this way because it's what I've seen so far and I don't have anything else to compare it to? Or am I giving these individuals what they actually need from a leader? I think a lot of it is that when you do it, when it is a quicker path through your career and as you progress, you really start to doubt yourself to think, am I strong enough to grow all of these individuals under me? And in fairness, give them the ability to have phenomenal careers that they seek as well too. And so for me, I think the leaving the company was a challenge to me. It was to, kind of to say to myself, I'm going to step way outside of my comfort zone. I'm going to go into an area that I've never done before. I'm going to go to a company I've never been before. And I'm going to see if I can be successful there as well too. Because if I can be successful outside of this, then I will feel stronger about myself and what I bring to the table as well. So, it doesn't make a lot of logical sense in everybody's mind, right? Because like you said, it's like you're striving for something and you feel like you're so close to getting it. And then all of a sudden you step back and you step away. But for me, I really needed that part of my life to develop a stronger level of confidence to let me be truly successful in where I wanted to get, and not just for me, but for the teams that I would be working with as well too. So that with that confidence, I could make sure that they also too felt confident in themselves and what they can do and what they can achieve.
I call that stepping into the great unknown.
Yeah.
Right. And it's terrifying, but it's how you grow the most.
Yes.
That taking that leap of faith after you have built a career and just saying, you know what, I'm going to quit. I'm going to try this other thing. My God, is so hard, but at the same time, it's so fulfilling. And even if you fail at whatever else you're trying to do, just the fact that you took the step of faith is going to give you so much wisdom, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think, for me, it really was just like that. It was, you have these expectations on you that, because you've been able to be successful in certain ways, people expect a certain level of commitment from you, and they expect a certain level of just success for what you're able to achieve, right? And going into something that was like you said, the great unknown, there were a lot of expectations as well too, because they knew my background, they knew my history, they knew, and so walking into there, the bar was set pretty high in terms of what they hoped that I could achieve for them. And that was a lot of it was a lot of pressure on you to perform. But I think again, you're challenging yourself in a way to say, yeah, it's either make or break, right? It either happens or it doesn't. And kind of like we said before, if I fail and I fell down, I learn to get myself back up and move forward. And I mean, I was able to just learn from individuals there that I would consider to be like role models in my life and mentors in my life, and learn so much and grow so much with them. But also see that, yes, again, with perseverance and with really strong commitment, I could be successful in that side as well too. And that really helps to just establish that understanding that it's more about the ability to say, I'm going to work hard at this. I don't have to know everything going in, and I don't have to be the expert if I can work with a really strong team of individuals. But as long as I'm committed and as long as I know that I'm there for the right reasons, I can get there and I can make this work.
Actually, and that's the secret. As human beings, we try to control everything, right? We try to make sure everything is provided for. We want to stay in the known. The known will keep you safe, therefore you will survive, because it's our biological response. That's the most primitive purpose of our biological bodies, to survive. And to survive, you want to stay in the known. But really to grow, and when you step into the unknown, you're going to have so much stuff that you cannot control. You have even no idea what you're getting yourself into, but you had the perseverance and the commitment.
Yes.
And with those two beautiful attitudes, you can accomplish whatever you want.
You're so right. It is so true. It seems, when you say it like that, it sometimes sounds so simple, and yet it's one of the toughest things to do, right? It's so hard, but when you break it down like that, it just sounds so easy. And so really remembering the simplicities of life and just saying like, that's at the core, that's at the core in terms of how to be successful or how to live a life that you want. But it just becomes so difficult with everything else around you.
I think when fear becomes courage, is when you start breaking free.
Oh, that's right? Beautiful. Yeah.
Because that's exactly what you did.
Yeah.
You actually turned because I can imagine your brain telling you, what the hell are you doing? You have a family, you're doing this. Look at your position, you are safe, you're making a ton of money. What the hell is wrong with you? And then you say, no, I'm still going to do this. That's called courage.
Yeah.
You grab your fear and you transmute it into courage. And look what happened, right?
Yeah, it's so true. And I was very lucky that the people in my life, like those closest to me, it doesn't matter what decision I ever make, they're always just so supportive, right? I mean, they'll give me their honest opinions, but at the end of the day, they're going to support me in whatever they think is going to make me happy. My husband, my family, my parents, my sibling, my friends, they're all just so incredible. And that makes it so much easier to take those opportunities, because if you had somebody in your life that was pushing back on that or trying to stand in the way of that, whether it was for the right reasons or not, it deters you from being able to take those steps, right? And I've never had to face that. So I've been very blessed that way.
That's beautiful. Mm-hmm. So you go to this new business,
yeah,
and you start kicking ass, right? And then what happened? What made you come back?
yeah. Good question. Yeah, you know what? It was an incredible journey with that business. We also went through, the cycles that you see in Western Canada, right? I've been through downturns with agate, but I went through downturns with that company as well too. And that was it's heartbreaking for any business. But again, you learn a lot and you grow from it. I really came back because at that time, I had stayed in very close contact with our owner, and he kept me up to date with what was going on. And he tried from time to time to say, right, what a lot of like what you said, why did you leave? Like, I thought this is what you wanted. But the point in time where I decided that I wanted to be back at this company and this was the right move for me. And I didn't come back for this position. I knew that long term, it might be a possibility that this option might be on the table or I could grow into it. But, I didn't come back because of that. And I didn't come back because there was a specific timeline ever given to me or anything to that nature. It was the discussions with the owner about the Agate Foundation. So aside from the company, the last 2 years, we've started an Agate Foundation, and the foundation itself is just doing some phenomenal work in the community. The commitment that I've seen from the owner and our employees to work hard so that we can help to support the foundation and to give back to the communities. To me, I mean, that's how I was raised. Those align with my values. My mother always taught me, to this day, you work hard to give back, and if you're not giving back, then you don't have that purpose in your life, and you need to be doing more than just things for yourself or your immediate group. You need to really help to make a mark in the world and make the world a better place. And so when we started talking, we talked about initiatives in the medical sector. We were doing a lot of work with the Prostate Cancer Center here in Alberta. We've done work with Sunnybrook in Toronto, really trying to foster the merging of science and research and development with how we can find solutions for some of these kind of like leading medical issues across our communities. There was also a big push on the opioid crisis. So the Agate Foundation partnered with the Calgary Police Foundation, or the Calgary Police Department, the Alberta Teachers Convention, and they did a lot of awareness campaigns with local youth, trying to educate kids at young ages about, how important it is to understand the ramifications of drug use and opioid use and addictions and mental health. And we brought, leading experts in that areas in for presentations. We've had them through the lab, and that hits home for me. In my own family, my extended family, we've definitely seen the pain of loss through opioid overdoses and just what addictions can do.
Yeah.
So when we started talking about that, and he started talking about, what the long-term vision was and some of the major projects, and the start of, one of the projects we're working on now is the Agate House, which is trying to build through the Agate Foundation a house that individuals can come to if they're seeking medical treatment in the city, kind of like, the thought of what the Ronald McDonald House would do on a much larger scale. And so all of these things, they were really important to me. And I realized that at this stage, I want to be not just working for my job and my career. I want to be working in something that I can feel like I'm giving back on a daily basis and see firsthand how the success that we can build as a company breeds success in our communities. So that's when I kind of made the decision that this is right for me to return.
That's beautiful. Is that philosophy that we're supposed to build more for ourselves and others. Yeah. And what I found in life is that the fastest way to fulfillment is by giving unconditionally, right? Every time, because we implemented something like that at the company, in the worst time of the company, when we were almost going bankrupt, I realized that we're not giving back at all. It was all in and more and more. And then I told everybody, I don't know how we're going to do this, but we're going to start supporting kids that have nothing to eat and that have no education. And I found a charity in Canada that supports kids in Guatemala. And I asked, how can I help? And she said, these poor kids come to school. We gave them school, but they have nothing in their bellies. And if you're hungry, you don't learn, right? Yeah. So I said, okay, we'll give them breakfast. But I don't know for how long, because I had no money. That was 2013. We have never missed a breakfast since then. And now we do lunches too.
That's incredible. Right? And it really is that where that ends up being so much more important than any other kind of metric of success, right? Yeah. More than building your revenue or building your profitability. It's like what kind of lives are we changing here, right? And there's two, we really focus on two folds. Like, we really want to be able to grow better livelihoods for our own employees as well too, right? And every single day we're trying to work on our strategy for how to make that happen, and getting through something like the pandemic and downturns, and it makes it so much more challenging, but doesn't change the fact that that's the goal. And then you layer on what you can do in the communities as well, and through that, that's what feels successful, right? And of course the company needs to be healthy and sustainable to do that, but at the end of the day, we're going to measure ourselves by the legacy we can leave that way. We're not going to measure ourselves by anything else. So I think that's what was the attraction of really returning to Agate.
And I think that's when you really find your purpose in life. So many people I know that are so successful, and they tell me, David, I feel empty. So when I feel empty, I try to achieve something else, and then they achieve it, and then they feel happy for 1 or 2 weeks, and then they feel empty again, because you have to have that sense of fulfillment through unconditional love, if that makes sense. And that's why you look so happy, because you are happy.
It's true. It's true.
If you had a billboard in the busiest highway on earth, what would you write in it?
Oh, gosh, that is such a good question. I would probably write, I preach a lot that you have to believe in yourself. So probably that, just believe in yourself, because I think that, I don't think that there's a problem on earth that can't be solved. And it goes down to every level, right? I don't think that there's a problem in a company that can't be solved, or a problem in a life or a relationship that can't be solved. I think what happens is that people lose trust in themselves, or they never had trust in themselves, either way. But the power of believing in yourself and believing that you can do anything, I think it can grow phenomenal rewards, not just to you as a person, but to the entire world. And so I guess that would be my answer, at least for today. It might change.
You know what? If everybody believed in themselves, this world will be another place.
Yeah.
Because when people start misbehaving, it's because they are afraid that they don't have enough, or they are not enough.
Yeah.
So it's just a cry for help, because they don't look inside, and they don't realize that everything they can ever want and need is already inside of them, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's very true. That fear can just overpower so much.
Yeah. Marissa, thank you so much for your time. I know you're super busy. Thank you for opening your heart to the audience. I know that if one person changes their life with this podcast, this is all worth it. And you're changing my life already. So it's all worth it already.
Well, thank you so much, David. Like I said, it's a pleasure to have been here with you today. I really appreciate the opportunity, and I look forward to hearing more of your podcasts moving forward.
Thank you so much, and keep changing the world for a better place.
You too, David. Bye-bye.
That's all for today's episode of the Break Free Podcast. Head on over to iTunes and subscribe to the show. Starting your own business can be tough, but it doesn't have to be. Visit davidmansilla.com to pick up a copy of the #1 international best-selling book, Breaking Out of Corporate Jail. Expand what you consider to be possible and reach your full potential. And join us on the next episode.